Guys, thanks for joining us for another Live Engineers 101. This week I speak to Iain Mackie from Live Sound and Danley Sound Labs UK. Iain, thanks for joining us today. Just to start off, if you can let the viewers know who you are and a bit about yourself.
My name's Iain Mackie. I run a couple of companies related to sound in Scotland. I've got Live Sound Limited, where we're a rental provider to sports events, festivals, gigs, all that jazz. And I distribute speakers from a couple of companies, one called Schertler from Switzerland and Danley from the USA.
Cool. Now, you started off as a sound engineer and worked your way up to where you currently are. Can you give a wee bit more about the progression, how you've done that, and from your beginnings, how you get into the industry?
It was kind of different routes back then. There wasn't college courses for such things. So I actually started doing audio, putting on free parties in the 90s, running away from the police. And we used to just sub-hire a PA off anyone that would give us it. And I stumbled upon how to plug it together. So all of a sudden I was the PA guy. So I fixed the audio. And I was interested in it as well. I liked it, and I DJ'd at the time and had a record label and produced music as well. So it was pretty much an accidental stumble path in audio. And then I went travelling, can't remember, late 90s, 98, 97, something like that. Washed up in Australia and started doing crew work, but for the big gigs, for like U2, Zoo TV tour and stuff like that. Wow. And I seem to have a reasonable aptitude on it, or maybe Australian people are just a bit thick, I don't know. But I went down well there and sort of got better jobs when I was there. I was there for a year and a half and came back to the UK and started looking for work in the same field. Set up a wee studio in my house, just a home studio, MPC 3000, and old MIDI gear. It was before computers could manage proper audio recording. And still had an interest, still DJ'd, but I wasn't full-time in the industry. I was a chef back then. And then a mate of mine seemed to think I knew something about PAs, and he was going to go and buy one to do wee parties and gigs. So he asked me to come along and help him to make sure it was okay, and it worked. So we ended up going halfers on it, and that was the start of a PA business. So it was exceedingly accidental. It was just... And there we are, 22 years later, and I've got a proper sort of grown-up, proper professional-ish business.
How do you see, or how do you compare to 20 years ago to now then, of the industry in general, or how the role of a sound engineer was back then to compare to what they do now? Obviously, there's analog to the digital.
Massively different. I mean, then you just turn up at a gig and you deal with whatever you had. There wasn't that much attention paid to riders and stuff like that. You just had what you had. I mean, you might walk in and you had a 12-channel mixer and a 28-channel band, and you just dealt with it. There was no formal education in the industry. But now people are far more skilled, far more trained, it's far more technical. I mean, half of the guff behind me, you've got to be a network engineer to operate. It's not as simple as it used to be, and it's far more technical. And the people at the top end of the industry, it's far more professional. The promoters you deal with, and the agents and the band's tour managers and stuff like that. I mean, it used to be you became a tour manager if you were big and you could hold enough 10p's in your pocket, because you were always putting 10p's into call boxes to phone the next gig and the next gig. I mean,
that's right.
I can't imagine how kids can think how on earth a world tour used to happen before mobile phones and emails.
Yeah.
But yes,
I hadn't even thought about that. Wow. Now, back then, what kind of desks were you using? Was it literally, every venue had a different desk, or did the bands actually tour with an analog desk? Because obviously they were much bigger and a lot of outboard and stuff.
On a bigger tour, they would tour, and it was just Midas all the way. It was XL3s, then XL4s, then Heritage 3000s, and then when was the last one made? About 17 years ago or something. They stopped making them 16 years ago. I can't remember. And then digital took over. I mean, with the PA company, I didn't go digital till Midas went digital, and they were late adopters compared to Yamaha and Co. But now I don't even have any digital Midas because they've kind of lost their way with Music Tribe and Behringer and all that jazz. But I mean, Midas was everything then. You got a gig spec or a festival spec. Yeah, it's got an XL4, it's got a Heritage, sorted, it'll be fine. And you just dialed it in 20 minutes, But now I think most touring guys, if they had to dial in a 40-piece band on an analog desk with analog outboard in 20 minutes, would be utterly aghast. I have to have my show file. It's like, just shut up and mix a band, It's fine.
From a production manager's point of view then, do you still get those tours who ask for analog? Is it very rare?
It's very rare. It's very rare. And what's weird is quite often it's the artist, because they want, like Jack White tours analog gear still.
Yeah.
But his engineers would rather have a PM5D or a profile or something, but they're stuck with XL4s either end because that's what the artist wants. So you still get a wee bit of it, but now the gear's actually getting so old, it's quite difficult to keep serviced. You've got to recap an analog desk, and I've got a Heritage line in here somewhere, but it's in a million bits.
You still see a lot of them on Facebook and people passing them on here and there, but you're really relying on somebody who's got a studio or a venue that wants that kind of thing.
And also there's the space, tours are much more about the dosh now, and everybody needs paid even at a medium level, so the space in the truck for a big desk and the big boxes of outboard, and also the space in the venue is bums on seats, smaller desk means you can sell more seats, you don't have as many strikes, so it's a money thing as well. But I mean, good quality digital desk now, it's pretty hard to tell the difference in a blind AB to an analog desk. Whereas at the start, when it was all PM5Ds and Yamaha stuff, I thought they sounded gash. I mean, I hated them. When you put one channel up, it sounded fine. When you put the other channel up, it sounded fine. Stick all 36 up together, and your mix was just brutal. I didn't like them at first. And part of the oncoming march of digital was when it sort of coincided with when I stopped mixing bands, because I didn't think it was as much fun. I didn't enjoy it as much. Looking at all these wee screens instead of listening and looking at your stage. Which is what you should be doing, is like, is the noise coming off the stage what I'm after?
You do see that with a lot of engineers who are just focused too much on a screen than looking in ears and moving faders, and you can get obsessed by it. Too much
even simple stuff like looking at your EQ curve on an analog desk, you don't see it. You just malky the pot until you hear what you want to hear, and you don't really care if it's plus 12 at 63 hertz or whatever, because you don't actually see any visualization of it. But I find with digital consoles, the visualization of what you're doing to the audio affects your ears, if that makes any sense. So when I first started getting forced into digital, sometimes I'd mix backwards. So, when you stop to have a listen to your mix before you alter something else, you're just having a wee think, first couple of tracks, I'd turn round. I'd turn my head away from the desk, so I didn't have any visual cues, and just listen backwards. But I'm a bit strange, so maybe that was just me.
You talked about the Midas going digital and so on. So through the years, obviously, there's been quite an evolution of digital desks and the technology. What would you say are the go-to desks that you'd recommend younger engineers who are getting into the industry to definitely check out? And what's your kind of go-to desks, or what you recommend? I know it's kind of the D-Live side of things that A-Live are mostly at.
Yeah, I've invested quite a lot in the Allen and Heath, which, I mean, at the end of analog days, Allen and Heath was awful. I mean, it was just extra added hiss. Their desks were terrible. I mean, they were price point, they were budget. But since they've gone S-Class and D-Class, and their digital output's amazing, I like them because you've got endless plugins. You can plug anything into it. Like if you buy Soundcraft, if you're into VIs, you have to buy another Harman product to plug into it, and they choke you at 5 effects and stuff. But with Allen and Heath, they just let you keep adding more stuff, and it's really easy to jack waves into it, or UI, or whoever's plugins the engineer wants. And they're great for busking. If an engineer turns up blind and he doesn't know the desk, there's 2 screens, which is nice and big. There's a good information flow. There's lots of set buttons. We dabbled with Digico for quite a while, but which is owned by the same parent group as Allen and Heath. I find the Allen and Heath more reliable, and that's probably because it's got its own software. It's not Linux, it's not Windows, it's ground up.
Yeah.
It knows it's a mixing desk. But I mean, they're all much of a muchness these days, and a lot of it, it's just people's personal preference. I mean, I've never bought many Yamahas because I don't like pastel knobs. I know it's not a real reason to not use a mixing desk, but I just don't like pastel knobs, so I don't like Yamaha. But if you had a Yamaha, a good end Yamaha, a good end Midas, a good end Allen Heath, a good end Digico, it's pretty hard to spot the difference.
Yeah, I mean, they all sound the same. It's more of what you're comfortable with or what you like, the workflow kind of thing. And it's also getting to know the desk you come across the most. Obviously, Glasgow or Scotland, there's Pro 2s everywhere, you know, so it's like, as long as you get to know a Pro 2, it's not my favourite desk, I know how to work it, and it's fine and it sounds good, but I've seen them go down. I've seen the only desk I've ever worked that's had many issues like that. And then SD range, there's a handful of places with SD, but with the D Live now, you see them now taking a wider market share.
Yeah, totally. I mean, they've smashed it. The gear's great, and the price point's good. As a rental house, you have to be thinking about your investments. If I was going high-end Digico, SD10s and stuff like that, you're looking at 70, 90 grand.
Yeah.
And a company of my size, I'm never really getting that back. But with the Allen and Heaths as well, you can keep adding more and more stage boxes. So into this desk here for the studio downstairs, I've got 128 inputs and 64 outputs in case I have 32 people needing stereo in-ears.
Yeah.
You know, you never know.
It's also, I mean, we've got, obviously I was nearly going to sell my SD9 to buy a D Live, but we've also got loads of SQs, 5s and 6s, but the stage boxes we've got are all the D Live stage boxes, the 168s and stuff.
You just keep going, just keep daising them. Whereas when you buy Digico, you've got a fixed format stage box, you have to decide in advance what you want. But with the purchasing with the Allen and Heath journey, you can just keep jacking more stuff together. You know? And the gain sharing on them is quite good. I think you got about 20 dB of trim. So, I mean, gain sharing is never ideal in a gig, but if you need to mix 128 channels, if you're doing orchestra stuff, you might not have 4 64-way stage boxes, so you just gain share. And as long as you know your mate on the other end of the multi, it's pretty safe with these, which is not that normal. A lot of desks with gain sharing are almost impossible. But sharing the mic preamps and stuff is a doddle. And they're made in the UK, so you know they're designed here. You get UK tech support. You get a friendly guy on the end of the phone when you've got a real dumble question at 2 a.m.
And also there's loads and loads and loads of YouTube videos of training of how to use their desks, whereas you won't find that with SD. You know, there's not that many. You really have to learn from somebody else. Let me take you back. So through your many years, what's your kind of memorable events or bands-wise of what you're mixed or been involved with that, you know, those moments where you just suddenly go, this is why I do it and I love it, and you tell that tale for the rest of your life? I remember you telling me was it the Grace Jones one?
Oh, yeah, because I used to love Grace Jones when I was a kid. So had to produce her at a festival a few years ago, and I knew she was a bit of a rocket and she was a bit touchy. So the promoter had timed her to finish at curfew on the Sunday night, and I'm like, no way, mate, you can't do that. It's Grace Jones. She's never turning up on time. So I did all sorts of mad stuff to try and get Grace Jones on time, and also her rider was just an absolute bag of madness. It asked for all this stuff, but it didn't say what she was doing with it. So there was a 10-metre high staircase at both sides that was 8 metres wide, but it didn't show you where it was meant to go. So I'm busy on YouTube, because when you're a fan of the artist, you don't want to make an arse of their gig. You just want everything to be great. And also so that when you meet the artist, they actually like you instead of throwing bricks at you for making an arse of their gig. So they had a pyro curtain on the front, and they had this and lasers and all sorts of stuff, but there was no explanation of how they were going to deal with it. But I had to provide everything from the festival. They were touring nothing. A wardrobe. They had a van full of wardrobe just for Grace. But I mean, she doesn't really wear anything. She just puts a bit of lecky tape on her nipples, and that's about it. And a pair of heels and a hat, you know. So that was a gig that I really enjoyed. And my sister came as well. My sister lives in Greece now. And that was the first time in her life she'd been at a festival. So that was quite sweet. And she was a big fan of Grace Jones as well. And the gig went really good, and she thought I looked hot in a kilt. So I was like, I can die now. Grace Jones thinks I look hot in a kilt. Magic. That's it. Take me now. I've lived. I'm done.
Yeah.
That was a good gig.
It's definitely
If a bit seat of the pants, because we had no idea what she was going to do. And in actual fact, she had her changing room backstage for all her dressing changes and stuff, and left her radio mic on, and there was certain not for the kiddies noises coming out of there when she left her radio mic on. So all in all, yeah, that was a good gig. I liked that gig.
We kind of get in a privileged position sometimes where you get a chance to meet people who you do kind of idolise, or you wouldn't normally. And it was like 2 years ago, I was over doing some stuff for PRG in Abu Dhabi. And I was doing a Mai Tai boxing event just as an acoustics engineer. And next door in the arena was Guns N' Roses, who were going to be playing on the Sunday night. And my flight was on the Sunday afternoon. And
are you a fan, are you?
Oh, I am a massive Guns N' Roses fan. That was right. My thing as a child.
The fight with Axel at Reading, I think.
I was so pissed off because I was like, listen, can you change my flight? I'll pay the extra, because it was a PRG gig that Guns N' Roses were involved in. It wasn't happening, and then I found out that they'd invited Guns N' Roses to come to our event, which was the day before. So I actually got to meet half of them, but it was not really meet. It was more they've asked me to, because I wasn't doing anything being a tech after the system, I was just monitoring the system. And then they were like, listen, we need something to fire off the confetti cannon. And there was a confetti cannon in each corner of the ring. And I went, I'll do it. But it was one of those big, massive ones that you sit on. It's huge. Yeah. And so I was at one corner, and they were like, and there was no wired comms left. So it was literally, when you hear one go off, just pull it. And what you had is, I was at the corner, you had Guns N' Roses here, literally 5 metres away. And then this side was all the Sheiks. And I'm just like, right, so I'm in between Guns N' Roses and the Sheiks. I'm about to fire a cannon. I'm like, if this goes wrong, I'm going to end up with
If I get this wrong, I might never leave here.
Wait for my hands to get chopped off or something. But, it's these...
Let you know you're alive, don't they? Because I ended up having a ding-dong with Axl Rose's security, because I was at Reading and I'd done my gig. I was touring with a visiting artist.
That's 2001?
Was it that long ago? Yeah. I was going to say it's maybe 10 years ago, but that shows how old I am.
Something like that.
Yeah, everything. It was definitely Reading. I remember that because I hate Reading. It's a manky site. I kind of never liked that gig. It's kind of, don't know, I just never liked it. So I'm trying to get to catering. And they've made another fenced walkway in the backstage area. So catering was behind the main stage. And I'm like, what's this for? I'm like, you can't go through. Guns N' Roses are coming to the stage. And I'm like, I don't give a shit about Guns N' Roses. I want my dinner. I've had a couple of cans, so obviously I'm getting a bit, boisterous. I've had a dig at my rider already because I'm getting a lift out there. I'm like, look, I've got an hour and a half to get out of here. I'm getting a lift out here back to Scotland. Let me go and get my dinner. I'm like, no, he's coming. So I waited there like 10, 15 minutes. But you know how they're always late on. He's always late for everything. So I went to hurdle the fence to go and get my tea, just when one of the Guns N' Roses, massive security guy, like 22 stone, started going at me. Big American guy started swearing at me. So I gave it straight back to him and went for a square go, and I'm just hurdling the fence and going to get my tea. So that was the closest I got to Guns N' Roses, was telling their security guard to go fuck himself.
I was gutted because they were supposed to be playing Glasgow Green at the summer. Yeah.
So yeah.
And my wife had kindly got us some Golden Circle tickets, right down the front. I was like, I'll pay whatever. And then it was like finding out who's going to be the production team on that, and then try and wing my way into the backstage bit, and then it'll get cancelled. And I was gutted. That was
this year. Yeah.
That was the thing I was actually most gutted about this year, which is really bad. Everything else fell apart, and I automatically thought, they better not cancel Guns N' Roses. The wife's panicking about the kids getting COVID and she's going to die and we're all going to be poor and the business is going to fold. And I'm like, but Guns N' Roses aren't playing.
That's the thing I'm most humpty about, is going on holiday. I just want to go on holiday. I love my holidays.
I know it's. But have you mentioned Australia there? Have you managed to get around quite a bit of the country or the world by doing sound or being involved?
Yeah. I mean, just this year we had festivals lined up in Italy, nice jazz fest in this wee UNESCO World Heritage town. Had festival in France, had one in Switzerland for this year or next. We were going to go and do one in Romania, this mountain festival, and they all sort of linked together. I had one in Ireland. So I was going to go to Ireland, and then I had to pick my gear up in Glasgow and then drive to France and then do the festival in Italy, and had a great year lined up. You know, it was brilliant. And then there was a couple of weeks off between the Italy one and the Bulgaria one. So I thought, I'll fly the missus out. We'll get a nice wee villa in Tuscany, hang out for a week or something, and then I'll trot off to Bulgaria. But all gone, you know. See ya.
Now, obviously, you've worked your ass off for 20 years, and what kind of advice or would you give engineers who want to get into that position? But also, what attributes would you say that you've got that helps you to achieve your goals there? Because you're trying to get from being a wee sound engineer and working your way to different positions. What do you think they need?
Always add value to your client. You know, you might just be the sound guy, but see if the generator goes down, there's no gig. And see if the generator goes down and you're quite good with electrics and you might be able to fix it, go fix it. Do you know what I mean? I know it sounds a bit weird, but always add value. Always be nice to everyone. Be nice to the crew on the way in the door. I know some folk will find this funny, but be polite. Even though I'm a big sweary guy, I am genuinely polite with everyone. You know, I could talk to a lawyer or a binman or the crew or the artist, and I'd treat them all much the same. And people will warm at you if you do that, because everybody in the gig's more important. Don't be a snob thinking that because you're the fancy front of house guy, you're better than the dudes that shoved your gear in the door, because you're not. You know, you need everybody pulling in the same direction to do a gig. And that's something we'll learn after COVID, is if one bit of the industry goes down, we're all screwed. If there's no promoters, there's no gig. If there's no venue, there's no gig. If there's no PA companies, there's no gig. If any one of us goes missing, there's no gig. And one thing through this time, I've noticed people in our industry probably been nicer to each other than we used to be. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's definitely a good thing. But I can't wait to get back at the back of a load-in door and call everybody a total wanker. Like we used to, and just have a laugh.
Even get us all in a room just to abuse each other.
Get it all out, months worth of pent up. My missus in the middle of summer, she started talking like we were on comms at a festival because she knew I missed the gig. So she go, Sally for Iain. Just as we're cutting about the house, anything to sort of normalise our usually daft summers, you know. Yeah,
I know. I felt like I should have slept in the back of the van at some point just to. Just put a lilac in the wife's like, what are you doing? I just want to go and sleep in the back of the van and watch Netflix on my iPad, you know, and have my Lilo.
Pretend I've got a 1 a.m. loadout and a 6 a.m. load-in, you know. Yeah.
I know. It's funny because we've got we've had long lives and been able to sleep and relax and have a schedule. And
I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning most of the time. It's driving me nuts. I wish I could. I just wake up and the mind starts ticking, and then might as well get up and have a coffee and get on with it.
Now, in terms of, obviously you've dealt with everybody, your musicians, your artists, and then you've got all your touring guys and their crew and so on. What's your pet hates that are very, very common that you see from an artist perspective, and then some techs or sound engineers, things that you can go, well, don't do that, don't do this, but should do this?
The artists probably bother me less, but more and more people are really prissy about, I can't use that, and I can't do this, and I can't use that, and you don't understand, I need to have the right exactly things, and then people put stuff on riders that they don't use, that bug, because it's wasteful.
Yeah.
I don't mind getting anything, whatever they need, as long as it makes their gig better. But if people are genuinely, and I think a lot of that attitude's going to go away, because when touring comes back, you can bet your bottom dollar the third from headliner at a festival during the day will not have an articulated lorry full of floor package lighting anymore. But that, must have attitude. I mean, I had some of my guys, I'll tell you, I had a spectacular falling out with a certain band who was actually sub-headliner at Grace Jones, because I wasn't going to let anybody make an ass of my Grace Jones gig. And he was wanting to cancel the show for 9 inches of stage. He had 36 foot of depth and he wanted 37 foot, and he threatened to cancel the show because of it. Just that note. And for a floor package that was going to happen in the middle of summer, that gig's on midsummer. So you don't see any of the lights anyway. And just that kind of nonsensy attitude, whereas I touched on before, maybe when I started, you turn up and you look at the PA and you're like, God, it's an absolute Frankenstein horror show. It's garbage and the desk garbage and never mind, let's get a gig on it. And you'd work with the local guys and just try your best to get the best gig you could. Yeah. But now I think there's a different attitude with some of the younger team, and they're a bit like, I need this and I need that. And you're just like, oh, fuck off and do your gig. You're nobody anyway. And I hope that attitude goes away, because it's not very healthy for the industry. And I don't know if it's because of the pressure on tours now, because of the hours you work. I mean, they're incessant. If you're on the road and you're banging in 18-hour shifts every day, it's quite hard on the head, And I wonder if some of that is from the pressure in that. Don't know. But I hope folk are nicer to each other after this.
I mean, I think everybody in our industry needs a big hug at the end of this, and it's like, we'll have the best piss up ever and we'll have the best party because we've got all the PA gear, the lighting effects.
Yeah.
And I really hope that once we start gigging, that there's a lot more respect from the artists that come through and venue staff and punters to go, hey ho, understanding it. I think people still don't realise how much it's been affected. Even the client I was speaking to the other day, after we did that, and I'm saying to you that one big bit of work we've had lately, I actually emailed and I said, listen, normally do say thanks to the business, but this time I actually went, listen, on behalf of me and the 9 freelancers that I used, we really do appreciate this because of, and she emailed me back saying, listen, I know your industry has had a terrible time, and it's making people still aware that, it's not gone away. People think they just don't have a clue.
Not long into lockdown, I was talking to somebody who's not in our industry, and they just presumed I would, move away and do something else. But they're line of, you've had a good time playing with gigs for the last 20 years. You've had a good run playing with them for the last 20. I'm like, you're lucky you're on a Zoom meeting, mate. If I could reach down the internet, we'd be rolling on the floor right now. What do you mean playing at gigs? It's not a game. Do you know what I mean? This is a serious professional industry with seriously well-trained people in it, and it's probably got more decency in it than your industry, But I think that has been a huge difficulty for our industry, is we've not been able to explain ourselves to the world. And I think that's probably because we move about wearing black in the shadows, so they don't see us. Somebody put it really well, somebody that was interviewing for another thing. It's like, we're like the puppet masters and the artist puppet, but you never see the puppet masters. You don't even see them pulling the strings,
Or Muppet. Kind of some of them are Muppets.
But people don't understand us. They don't get it. And I've put quite a lot of work in to try to explain to my MP how it all works and who we are. And they just don't get it. Yeah. They just don't. They don't get it.
It's a different thing. Now, obviously, you're talking about a lot of different productions and stuff there. What's been the biggest challenge from a sound engineer's perspective? Like, what's the biggest challenging gig that you've done? You've mentioned orchestra before and stuff like that, but what's the ones you go, feck, here's a challenge?
Orchestras have been tricky, yeah. It's usually the room that's the challenge, to be honest. Quite a lot on installations, they're like, I want the best sounding nightclub in Scotland, and you're like, it's a concrete box, mate, with glass mirrors everywhere. It's not going to happen. And they're like, oh, but somebody said you know how to do it. I'm like, I do, but it's like if you're trying to paint the Mona Lisa or something, you wouldn't take the bit of paper, scrunch it up into a ball, and then open it out again and start painting. But that's what it's like for us. I think client expectations is the most difficult thing to manage because people think everything can be great, and you're like, no, you've missed the fundamentals. There's the room, the speaker, how it sounds in the space, and all these things put together. I guess for horrible, challenging gigs, I don't know. I mean, I produced the first shows down outside the yard in SWG3, and that was quite a challenge because it was quite a difficult space. I'm trying to think who we had. It was the LCD and the XX, and I'm a big fan of LCD sound system as well. I love them. So I wanted that one to go well. But James Murphy was magic. They liked it. I mean, it's quite a cute space for them. I mean, it's 5,000, but for LCD, they could probably do a few more than that. But that was quite challenging because of the geography of the space. It's a dead end, so you've got all these Artex and you're planning for your truck routes and stuff like that. It was quite tricky.
Was the sound restrictions as well placed on you
Yeah, we were doing audio for that. It was an array process V-Rig for that one. And it was really tight licensing. I remember Lindsay from KSG is on the text, as she always is. She usually texts me, because she's away doing the offside monitoring.
Yeah, I've had that text.
You've got to turn it down. You've got to turn it down. I'm like, what for? She's like, you're half a dB short of the limit. And I'm like, good day. I'm like, text me back when it's half a dB over. I'm not turning down LCD just because you're crapping it a wee bit. And we ran the whole thing for 2 hours or whatever it was, between half and a quarter dB to limit. But their guy was amazing. Their front of house engineer was excellent, really good. They deliberately put and mic up 11 cowbells on stage, the band, so they all just, the more cowbell joke. So he just randomly mutes them, doesn't really care. So they can be banging away and there's nothing coming up the microphone. So there's all these quite fun games between the crew and the band. They were a nice bunch to work with. They were a really nice bunch. And it's days like that, you walk away and you think, I made a kind of tricky wee gig, work in a nice space, and you worked with nice people and they were appreciative. And at the end, they say, thanks very much. You and your team are a bunch of nice guys. And you go home and you smashed a 20-hour day, but you think, I've made things a wee bit better in the world today. And 5,000 people enjoyed a great show. So
it's amazing,
that's what was all worthwhile, isn't it?
A lot of clients don't realise that the time when you turn up on site and go, fuck, this is going to be a challenge, and all the problems that arise and the solutions that you come up with. And at the end of the day, you pull all off and you go, yeah, great.
That's it.
Yeah. And they have no idea any of that.
No. Sometimes your client's like, you're not looking that great, is everything okay? Yeah, it's fine.
They wonder why you're white as a sheet.
Yeah. There's a tsunami coming this way and you've not told them or something, do you know what I mean? But you're just like...
I had the end of, actually about a year ago, and it was a Christmas, big, massive corporate Christmas do with bands and a horrible space, but it was a hell of a lot of work, a hell of a lot of gear. But one thing we weren't in charge of was power. It was all supplied, generators, blah, blah, blah. And everything went well. We pulled off the sound checks, everything was tight, it was all running smoothly. And then literally they were like, right, they're doing a big reveal to all their staff. And literally 5 minutes before they do the reveal, one phase of the Jenny goes down, which is all the power for the PA. And it was just, that, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember just going white as a sheet. But it had nothing to, luckily, it's that way of, you can say, it's somebody else's fault because we didn't supply Jenny, blah, blah. We managed to sort it all out within 20 minutes, but that moment of, and that's the real test, I think, with a lot of people is you can either fight or flight. You can either just go, don't know what to do, panic, and straight away the client sees you can't achieve this.
So did you get involved with the solution for that? Because that's what I was saying earlier on about adding value.
Yeah. I mean, the client has no idea how we fixed it all. It was just one of those things I went, we'll get it sorted. But backstage, you're just like... But luckily, the people who provided Jenny, between the two of us, we figured out a solution and moved some phasing about. But yeah, for that 20 minutes where you're just suddenly white as a sheet, you actually feel like you're going to be sick because there's so much riding on it. And I've had stories, or even talking to, was it Andy, who was saying one of the guys at one of the festivals accidentally turned off the main power to the stage at a festival. And it was like, can you imagine that, being that guy round the back? You went, I'm just going to plug my phone
in. Yeah. We've all been there, a few nasties. Last year it was really, or was it the year before, one of the two, it was really bad for lightning. And they just changed the laws on lightning strikes on festival sites, or lightning strikes near festival strikes, because there was a terrible accident in Belgium where I think a tent or a structure got hit.
That's right.
So quite rightly, we changed the legislation around it. So I was running this site, 9 stages live, and I'd had 6 lightning strikes already. So 6 complete stage closures already. And I jiggled times about, and we'd messed about, and we were changing bands over on the main stage in 10 minutes, just trying to catch up the time, And then we had another strike near site, And I was at that point, I was going to lose an artist, and I only had 3 left on the main stage. So I was going to lose an artist that had cost the promoter a lot of money. So rescheduling 9 stages on the fly over comms in the middle of a lightning strike, sat in a van, so you're not in your porta cabin that's got a massive metal aerial on it, and the promoter's on the phone every 2 minutes, what's happening? I'm like, I'm just dealing with it, just go away. When are they on? I'm making up as I'm like, and then at the end of it all, we managed to get all the artists to play. We did super quick turnovers. 2 of the artists before the support dropped 10 minutes out their set really kindly, and it all went off fine, and then at the end of the day, I went back in to look in the back of the van, and it was about 400 different set times, all with massive crosses through the one pens, and just rework it. But you just battle on and you find a way, you know? And I think that's what young guys getting into it should be doing. They should be always having a good plan B, a good plan C.
It's definitely
always be nice to their clients when the shit does hit the fan, you know?
It's a key to it as well that a lot of the time, you can be periods where we're manic, and then there's calm. There's periods of nothing happening, and it's making sure that you're not complacent with the fact of, everyone's great, because you have to make sure that when things go wrong, that you're on the ball and not fall apart. And I think it comes with a bit of confidence, but if you're around people who have that ability as well, it kind of goes on to them as well. It just comes with, I guess, experience and time and mixing with the right people.
And try to hang out and work with good people when you can. Take your own pick of staff and stuff, and getting a good selection box of skills. So when the poo hits the fan, which it inevitably will, you reckon you've got a good bunch of ninjas to bail your way out of it, you know?
Totally. In terms of, we spoke about COVID and everything. I don't want to really go into the whole, everybody's spoken about COVID 100 million times, but where do you see the role of a sound engineer, how it's going to possibly change for once we come back to doing live gigs, especially from a band's perspective? Do you see anything majorly changing for a sound engineer, or skills that they need to improve on?
Probably, I don't know. I guess it depends what format gigs take. I mean, if we're waiting on a vaccine and everyone gets jagged and it's gigs as before, then it'll be much the same, I would have thought. But if we are doing limited capacity gigs and stuff like that, nothing soaks up audio like a good big fat crowd. So if we've got venues with a person in every 8th, 9th seat and stuff like that, the reflections and stuff in the PA are going to be vast. I also think whatever way gigs come back is people aren't used to listening to loud music anymore because they've not heard it for 6 months.
That's going to be a bit surprise.
I tromped about the house for about 5 weeks, and then I was like, I'm going to work, you know. So I came in here, and then I was like, what am I doing here? There's no gigs, there's no work. So I thought, I'll set up some speakers. That's what I'll do. So stacked a couple of speakers. My back was killing me because I hadn't moved any gear for months, you know. Put some techno on, stuck some banging tunes, and I'm like, oh God, that's what I've been missing. It's bass. I've not heard bass for 5 weeks. That must be the longest time since I was 16 that I haven't been at a gig or heard bass. And that was a big relief. But I think lots of folk and mates that have come down to the yard to hang out a wee bit during lockdown have been like, when you put tunes on, they're like, that's great. So we've not heard loud music. So hopefully people will mix a bit quieter, because I think a lot of people mix far too loud for the sake of loud now. I mean, I know I'm loud and I like big PAs and big bass bins, but maybe we'll be more mindful of people's hearings and people's ears.
What do you think about with gigs where bands sharing gear, and especially mics are going to change? Because I mean, obviously I do a lot of venue work, so there's a lot of sharing mics, especially vocal mics. I think bands will probably be touring a lot more of their own equipment, you know, especially their own mic package.
I offered a bunch of musician mates and folk that come down to capture works, I'll sell them a 50 at cost. And then I did another wee scheme that if you don't have the money, just buy the grill buy your own grill. It's only £6 or £8, and at least when you go into a venue, you can put your own grill on. But people are going to have to be more hygienic with the gear. At Captureworks, we've got enough mics that we just quarantine them for 4 days and then give them a wee alcohol wipe, and that's it. But I think all of that sort of stuff will change. I know a couple of guys were doing the prep for that run of gigs in Newcastle, the Unity Arena. Seemingly it was really good. They all said they got treated really nice. Backstage was slick. The setup was really slick. Everybody really enjoyed doing those gigs. They were well run. So hats off to the dudes that pulled that off, because you got the only gig of the year, and they're going to smash it at the festival awards, aren't they? They're going to get everything. There's no point in anyone turning up except Winter Wonderland that happened in January. But yeah, the way they were preparing for the gigs were different, and all own mics, own stands, own everything. Instead of being in a bus, the touring party were in multiple cars, same 2 people in the same car every day. So maybe a lot of that stuff will change, but I guess it's how it comes back. I mean,
I think people would still
have a roadmap in the UK.
Yeah.
I've seen German and French health and safety stuff for doing gigs during COVID, and they've managed to get some shows on. But we don't seem to have a route map just now, and I'm not sure why that is, really.
I wonder if the mindset's going to change, but in terms of people are a wee bit more cautious on stage, especially if you're a venue tech and if you're doing monitors and you're quite close to the band, and obviously you're going to have to do probably a lot more cleaning. So I'm assuming they'll probably get in the habit of now, you end your shift when you finish a gig, instead of packing it all up and throwing it into the flight case, it'll be, you've got to sanitise the mics down, and, you know.
Well, there's these UV machines. A mate of mine, Steve Badham, selling them, and it's about the size of a 1210 turntable or something, but square. And it's all approved as it does the job, and that kills COVID in a minute and a half. So you can stick 36 or 28 mics in it at once.
Wow.
Hit the blast button and away you go. But there will be a lot more of that cleaning stuff, quarantining stuff, maybe having extra gear. But I guess it all depends how we come back. If we're not back till it's a vaccine, then maybe none of that stuff's relevant. I'm not too sure.
Okay. Cool. Now, just to sum up what we were speaking there about, what would you say is your main points for these young guys or engineers who want to progress?
Do as many jobs as you can. Don't be the prissy guy that's only going to mix front of house, because there's actually much better gigs in the music business than mixing front of house. I'd rather be a system tech myself. Set up the system, make it sing, make the venue sound great, and then bog off to catering and let the front of house guy talk to the band. Be as useful as you can in as many areas as you can, and look at the skill sets related to sound engineering. Like, you're probably quite au fait with quite a lot of software these days if you're a decent sound engineer. So get your skills up there. Networking is a big deal, you know, get your Dante certificates, work out how networks work. You might think it's just for telephone engineers, but it's not these days, you know. And just keep adding as many skills as you can, because it makes you more employable by folk like me. If you're good at driving, get an HGV, get your forklift ticket, get your, you know, whatever you can to add to your skill set, because it's going to be a pretty competitive market coming out of this. And get your head down and do your graft, and don't be too lippy straight off the bat. Older guys can be lippy because we've been around the block and we've done our bird, but when the 17-year-old turns up and tries to give me the same shite that I give everyone else, it's not going down very well, you know. Be funny, yeah, be yourself, be personable, but, you know, fit in, I guess. When I'm looking for staff here, I'm less interested in what their skills are, and I'm more interested how they fit together with my team. Because if they don't get on with the guys that already work here, there's no job for them. You know, I can't have folk falling out with each other. I try and bind them through a shared hatred of me, and that's how it works. Okay.
Oh well, on that note.
But just try hard. Just always be upping your skills and upping your skill level, you know. If your mate's got a studio, get in there and do a bit of mixing, you know, and see what the studio side of things is like. Because I know a few guys that have gone from live to studio and vice versa, you know. Just be as useful as you can be, and be as nice about it as you can, even if you're having a kind of crap day.
Well, thank you very much for your time and your wisdom. And we'll end it there, sir.
Nice one. Cheers.
Thanks, sir.
Cheers, Scott. Take it easy.
Thanks for watching another Live Engineers 101. Please remember to subscribe, like, and leave any comments, and we'll see you next week.